Evidence secured at marker 4. Advise command we are holding the scene.
Copy that. It's getting heavier out here.
The man who drove Nancy Guthrie home just vanished. Her son-in-law, Tommaso Cioni, refuses to speak publicly. 6 weeks of searches yielded nothing but echoes. Detectives impounded Ani Guthrie's car for weeks, gutting it during an exhaustive search before returning it. Investigators scrutinized Dominic Evans, a 19-year bandmate, hiding felony robbery and burglary convictions. His build, height, and distinct facial hair mirror every detail within the FBI suspect bulletin regarding Derek Kayla. Police arrested this man from Tommaso's music circle after he sent a direct ransom text to Ani and Tommaso's shared phone. He bypassed Savannah. He ignored the FBI. He targeted Tommaso personally. Nearby ring cameras mysteriously blacked out on just one side of a house, the precise angle facing NY's property. Someone carried an 84-year-old woman into the desert without her hearing aids. They left her crucial evening heart medication untouched on the counter the next morning. 42 days, over 40,000 tips, 10,000 hours of footage, the FBI, Customs and Border Protection, specialized cadaver dogs, genetic genealogy, and a relentless task force commanding a federal building. Yet authorities named 0 suspects. They identified 0 persons of interest. They made 0 arrests. Who is hiding what? Everyone demands answers today. Did the perpetrator execute a flawless crime? Or is something failing spectacularly behind closed doors? The Arizona Republic answered that question this week. Pay close attention to the man commanding this massive investigation. This leader released the active crime scene in under 20 hours. He shipped crucial DNA to Florida instead of Quantico, directly contradicting FBI evidence claims on national television. Superiors forced that official out of his first policing job 44 years ago. He kicked a suspect's head, brutalizing him into the intensive care unit. He accumulated 37 suspension days across 6 years, resigned, avoiding termination, and faked 2 resume years hiding the gap. Meet Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos. This video reveals exactly how his dark history derailed this investigation. Let us break this down. Before analyzing his catastrophic missteps in the Guthrie investigation, examine the man Nanos was long before Nancy vanished. This official did not simply turn careless while operating under immense pressure. His career originated with a disciplinary record that ruins most officers. Welcome to El Paso, Texas, 1976. A 20-year-old Chris Nanos joins the force. Commanders assign him to decoy operations. He plays human bait, trapping street criminals and drug dealers. He starts hoarding official suspensions within his very first few years. Not 1 or 2 slip-ups. Over 6 chaotic El Paso years, brass suspended him for 37 total days. His infractions spanned from chronic tardiness and skipping shifts to illegal gambling and blatant insubordination. Then came the brutal force. Police records obtained by the Arizona Republic detail a horrifying incident near his El Paso tenure's end. Nanos reportedly kicked a robbery suspect during an arrest with such devastating power he hospitalized the man in the intensive care unit. That savage attack earned him a 15-day suspension, the longest single penalty staining his record. Department officials labeled his behavior a pattern of consistent inefficiency. Translated, they built a case to fire him. Nanos beat them to the punch. He resigned in 1982, yet migrating between El Paso and Arizona, 2 phantom years miraculously appeared on his service dates. His public resume falsely claimed his El Paso employment ended in 1984. His run actually terminated in 1982. The Arizona Republic confronted the department this week. A spokesperson issued a statement labeling the date discrepancies strictly administrative, denying any intent to mislead. Their statement completely dodged the damning allegation. Did he resign solely to outrun a firing? Fast forward. Nanos lands in Pima County. He builds a career, aggressively climbing ranks. He seizes the sheriff title. By 2015, the FBI investigates his department for misusing civil asset forfeiture funds. They tracked seized criminal cash that legally must fund legitimate law enforcement operations. Federal agents exposed a massive grift. Leadership redirected hundreds of thousands of dollars toward lavish award dinners and blew $20,000 building a commercial kitchen inside the department. They launched a cafe, reportedly connected to the niece of Nanos's top deputy. Feds indicted Chief Deputy Chris Radke on serious charges in 2016. Radke took his own life while trapped under investigation. The government never indicted Nanos. Prosecutors filed 0 charges. But this colossal corruption festered inside his own house, directly under his supervision, right on his watch. His violent reaction reveals everything. He stormed onto KGUN, a local Tucson broadcast, publicly trashing the FBI investigation as garbage. He declared himself absolutely outraged by the Bureau. He dared them to admit the entire probe was total BS. Former Chief Deputy Richard Castigar eventually told the Daily Mail something chilling. Nanos harbors massive disdain for the FBI, gripping a bitter grudge from that 2015 investigation. That deep-seated disdain forms the toxic thread connecting every bizarre decision he executes in the Guthrie case. Now enters the explosive November 2024 election. Nanos demands re-election. Imagine neutralizing your biggest political threat by locking them in their own house. That is exactly what happened to Lieutenant Heather Lapin, a deputy within the sheriff's own ranks. Weeks before the election, Nanos shoved Lapin onto administrative leave. He confined her to her home during business hours, effectively crippling her campaign. He did not stop there. He suspended Sergeant Aaron Cross, president of the Deputies Union. Cross appeared in a photograph holding a sign reading, "Deputies do not want Nanos." Consequently, Lapin and Cross filed federal lawsuits against him. County Supervisor Matt Hines stepped in, requesting the Attorney General and United States Attorney investigate the moves as election manipulation. Nanos won by 481 votes, 481 across the entire county. What kind of leader suspends a union chief over a cardboard sign? What leader sidelines his political rival weeks before an election instead of debating her record publicly? That is not confidence. That is a sheriff who spent 44 years learning that when challenged, you do not answer. You eliminate them. But this approach invited absolute disaster. The disaster started internally. Before Nancy Guthrie ever vanished, 85 out of 86 deputies in the Pima County Sheriff Department voted no confidence in Chris Nanos. 98%. We are not talking about anonymous internet critics. These are sworn officers who drive his patrol units, execute his warrants, process his crime scenes, and investigate his cases. 98% of them stared at their commander and declared, "We do not trust this person to lead us." That vote happened before the Guthrie crisis. It was not a reaction to his handling of Nancy. It was a cold verdict on who he already was. This exact man rolled up to Nancy Guthrie's residence on February 1st. Surprisingly, for the first few hours, he played it perfectly. He arrived personally. He told reporters he rarely does that for missing person calls and immediately summoned homicide detectives. He saw this was no standard walkaway. Investigators confirmed Nancy's blood pooled near the front entrance. The attacker violently ripped the doorbell camera straight off its mount. Life-saving medication sat abandoned on the counter. Nanos read the scene accurately. The events inside were deliberate, planned, and violent. But would it hold? It failed completely. Reading a crime scene and managing an investigation are two entirely different skills. The collapse lived inside that gap for 6 weeks. Investigators should have treated that house as a long-term forensic site. Think about the facts. We have an abducted elderly woman, 0 confirmed sightings, and no ransom verification. With biological evidence smeared at the entry point, you freeze the property. You process it slowly. You bring in elite specialists. You document every surface, every threshold, and every point of contact between the attacker and the environment. You never release it in 20 hours. Nanos opened the doors, unleashing a parade of contamination that forensic experts call unprecedented for a case this severe. Ambiance Pool Service arrived, a company with 0 work history at that address, yet a deputy personally escorted them into the backyard. The business told TMZ they never previously had a client at Nancy's home. Then, a landscaping crew brought in heavy equipment. Someone ordered pizza directly to the active scene. A home health aide wandered through. Journalists from multiple networks approached the front entrance, snapping photographs of Nancy's blood on the ground. Content creators swarmed the perimeter. Neighbors confirmed that for days after the lockdown, zero consistent law enforcement presence controlled who entered and exited the property. Over a century ago, forensic science established Locard's exchange principle. The rule dictates that every contact leaves a trace. Every civilian walking that property deposited skin cells, hair, fibers, and shoe impressions. Each new trace blended with whatever the suspect left behind. Every layer of contamination muddies the forensic picture, making it easier to challenge in a courtroom. A defense attorney does not have to prove their client was somewhere else. They only need to prove the evidence is untrustworthy because police compromised the scene. And this scene completely collapsed before dawn. Then the FBI returned, discovering the initial sweep entirely missed a roof-mounted camera. Let that sink in. The first pass through Arizona's most critical crime scene overlooked an entire surveillance camera. The department drafted Google engineers just to attempt data recovery from the device. Forensic death investigator Joe Scott Morgan reviewed the post-release activity at the house and branded it a total breakdown of protocol. He noted the absolute lack of a gatekeeper. Nobody controlled access, logged names, or documented who crossed the line. He emphasized that every individual dropping biological material contaminated the forensic landscape. Then he delivered a critical warning. The vital DNA evidence anchoring this case might now belong to the strangers the department invited inside. Cross, the union president Nanos, suspended over a cardboard sign, told the New York Post, "This disaster did not look good for the department." That is a diplomatic way to admit the sheriff's own deputies watched this happen and knew it was dead wrong. Now we reach the laboratory phase. This is exactly where a bitter 2015 grudge stops being backstory and starts threatening justice. The mixed biological evidence investigators recovered from inside Nancy's home holds the final piece of the puzzle. The most critical evidence in a kidnapping bypassed federal resources. Investigators boxed up the sample holding the suspect's genetic profile. They mailed it to a private forensic lab in Florida, ignoring the FBI laboratory division at Quantico, Virginia, which operates one of the most advanced forensic processing facilities on Earth and strictly maintains dedicated rapid response protocols exclusively for kidnapping victims. In kidnapping cases, speed never acts as a simple preference. It dictates the exact margin between life and death. Yet Sheriff Nanos explicitly told NBC that processing could take weeks, months, or even a full year. He refused to split evidence across two labs. He claimed the Florida facility already held other case samples, so keeping everything together made perfect sense. Former Arizona Supreme Court Justice Andrew Gould dismantled that reasoning on Fox News, declaring the sheriff made mistakes that outright impeded the investigation. A former justice from the state's highest court selecting the word impeded on national television completely transcends casual commentary. Watch a legal mind deploy a term with total precision. Detectives also processed the gloves recovered approximately 2 miles from Nancy's home. The DNA results ultimately pointed toward a local restaurant employee holding absolutely zero connection to the crime. That massive lead, the one everybody desperately believed would crack the investigation wide open, died instantly. What remained? Only one profile remains, that mixed sample from inside the house still sitting down in Florida. Then public statements began contradicting each other in ways pushing far beyond simple miscommunication. Through an official source, the FBI told News Nation they found a glove inside Nancy's residence. That same day, Nanos hopped on Fox News and definitively stated nobody took a glove from the house. He claimed they found absolutely no glove on that property. Two major institutions spoke about the exact same evidence, delivering completely opposite accounts. Back in early February, during the opening days, Nanos told reporters, "Everybody remains a suspect." He repeated the word, everybody. This mirrors standard law enforcement language, keeping avenues open. By February 16th, he completely reversed course. announcing investigators cleared all Guthrie family members, including spouses. He labeled the online suspicion cruel. He called it shameful. Yet while preaching that publicly, his detectives still executed searches at Ani and Tommaso's property. They kept photographing rooms and removing items. Their car sat in an evidence bay for weeks after officials supposedly cleared the family. Why clear them publicly? The story fractured. 4 news organizations, ABC, CBS, NBC, and CNN, each reported through independent law enforcement sources that the masked figure appeared at Nancy's door multiple times before she vanished. These outlets cited incredibly specific visual evidence, detailing images showing the suspect with and without equipment across visibly different visits. The sheriff's department shot back, releasing a written statement calling this reporting purely speculative. Instead of holding structured press conferences where reporters hear identical information simultaneously, Nanos sat with individual outlets separately. Fox News received one version, NBC caught another, the Daily Mail got a third, and the BBC grabbed a fourth. Each interview generated a slightly different account of the investigation's status. Retired FBI Supervisory Special Agent James Gagliano labeled this a fundamental messaging failure. He noted officials released information in chaotic fits and starts. They walked things back. They stated critical details incorrectly. Retired FBI Special Agent Robin Drake provided an assessment tying this communication problem strictly to the investigation itself. He described Nanos functioning like an unintentional noise black hole, absorbing media attention and generating massive controversy that keeps the press focused on the sheriff rather than the evidence. The story becomes entirely about Nanos, his contradictions, and his interviews. While the story fixates heavily on Nanos, it ignores the critical DNA, ignores the suspect, and ignores Nancy. Drake also raised a deeply structural concern, exceeding simply bad press conferences. He suggested the 98% no-confidence vote created an environment where detectives avoid fully briefing their own sheriff. Who wants to brief a liability? The silence starts here. If investigators know whatever they share with Nanos could end up in a solo interview with Fox News the next morning, phrased entirely wrong, timed awfully, or directly contradicted by what he told NBC an hour earlier, they protect their case by severely limiting what flows upward. Nanos then speaks from horribly incomplete information. His public statements come out totally wrong. The press eagerly highlights these glaring contradictions. The vital investigation drowns in noise, while the real police work happens entirely around the sheriff, not through him. That specific dynamic, detectives working despite their leadership rather than because of it, makes the next round of failures incredibly damaging. How bad does it get? Listen closely. Because these stop being basic communication problems here. These remain massive operational decisions that destroyed evidence and permanently closed investigative windows nobody can ever reopen. The forfeited Bluetooth tracking capability serves as the most consequential loss. Nancy's pacemaker actively syncs its life-saving data strictly through Bluetooth technology. Detectives possessed a classified capability that they strategically withheld from the public. They rigged a stealth chopper to hunt down one specific pulse. Aviators swept the desert wasteland surrounding NY's subdivision. If her internal pacemaker emitted even a faint transmission, this tracker would pinpoint the exact coordinates. They bypassed airspace warrants entirely. No ground team alerted anyone to their presence. Silent and completely invisible. Then the press leaked this capability before searchers finished clearing every single grid square, denying the tech its full opportunity. The kidnapper turned on the evening news and learned police could track Nancy's pacemaker. That signal permanently vanished. Where did investigators cap their boundary? Just 2 miles outside NY's residence. Yet a Camino Royale security camera, positioned roughly 2.5 miles out, caught a mystery vehicle at 2:36 in the morning. It happened on February 1st. That timestamp aligns precisely with the pacemaker's final transmission 8 minutes prior. Cops ignored this footage because it sat outside their canvas zone. The couple voluntarily surrendered it after watching the news. Detectives never even contacted them. It took 4 full weeks before authorities expanded the perimeter. Meanwhile, officials pushed a narrative, heavily emphasizing their collaboration with the Mexican government. This matters because Tucson sits 60 miles from the border, making Interstate 19 a straight shot south. But Mexican authorities told journalists no formal request was ever made. American brass insisted cooperation was happening. The Mexican side bluntly stated nobody ever called them. One more official statement completely shatters when tested against the actual people involved. The Madres Buscadores de Sonora, a Mexican volunteer crew boasting over 5,000 recoveries in identical desert conditions, drove to Arizona specifically for this case. Police turned them away. The United Cajun Navy offered their full operational package, receiving zero response. Ex-FBI agent Cafundifer publicly demanded to know why Nanos keeps blocking proven search groups. The Guthrie family recorded desperate pleas to the kidnapper, and Savannah publicly offered $1 million in cash while America watched. Meanwhile, Chris Nanos attended an Arizona Wildcats basketball game. He reappeared on NBC this week. He told correspondent Liz Cross his detectives are definitely getting closer. He claimed he knows the exact motive behind Nancy's targeting. He personally believes Nancy Guthrie remains alive, dropping a stark warning. Do not assume you are safe because this happened to the Guthries. Retired FBI operative Steve Moore jumped on Brian Enton's podcast with the sharpest reality check this case has seen yet. He explained exactly why that $1 million payout remains untouched today. The attackers are the only humans who actually know the truth. They locked this secret down. There is no outside bystander sitting on information. No accomplice is weighing a confession. The inner circle is sealed, which is a devastating admission from a federal veteran. Detectives can no longer rely on a random tipster calling the hotline. They must solve this forensically through DNA, cellular tower analysis, and deep genetic genealogy. They must comb through 10,000 hours of footage frame by frame. Science has to deliver what the streets will not. Will this perpetrator repeat the crime? Moore delivered a direct answer. If money was not the motive, the identical dark urge will command them to act again. Beating the system does not erase their impulse. It reinforces it. A violent offender who crushes a vulnerable target and skates consequence-free absorbs a tactical lesson. It works. Nanos basically agreed with that exact assessment during his NBC broadcast. But talking is not action. 42 days of agreement without an arrest is just stagnation holding a microphone. The Bureau recovered fresh thumbnails this week from all 3 security lenses monitoring NY's property. They scraped the pool, backyard, and side yard feeds. These are stills only, zero motion video. ABC News confirmed. These grabs show people roaming the yard before the abduction, yet authorities claim nothing looked suspicious. Unknown people in the yard right before a kidnapping. Cops refused to disclose who was out there or when. Nancy Grace just uncovered a massive curveball regarding a secondary pair of hearing aids. The victim likely wore them during the attack. Digital forensics experts went on television to explain these earpieces operate precisely like Apple AirPods. They connect through Bluetooth and can potentially broadcast their location. But the suspect left NY's smartphone sitting on the bedside table, severing the digital tether we desperately need. Imagine half of a home surveillance system mysteriously dying. Detectives just confirmed finding a demolished utility box right near NY's property. Nanos claims his squad seriously doubts any connection. Yet, this happened on a street where security lenses on one flank of a residence went totally blind, while the opposite angles recorded flawlessly. Discovering smashed electrical infrastructure inside that exact blackout radius demands intense scrutiny before anyone shrugs it off, which leads to the Wi-Fi interference. How authorities handled that technical clue reveals exactly how sluggish this probe has actually been. On March 6th, 34 days in, federal agents finally started knocking on doors across NY's block, asking neighbors about internet failures the night she vanished. 34 days. For 5 solid weeks, law enforcement completely neglected to ask locals if their cameras even functioned. That couple whose Ring doorbell died facing NY's yard? They remained oblivious about their deleted footage until manually checking the logs themselves. Not a single cop ever instructed them to look. Reviewing those logs, they realized their pet had startled them awake the exact second those feeds crashed. The animal behaved frantically, pinning its ears and locking its gaze on NY's residents. The dog, the blackout, the precise timestamps all existed since day one. Yet it took 5 agonizing weeks before any badge bothered uncovering the glaring truth. A localized signal jammer, a smashed electrical junction, targeted camera failures, a panicked dog sensing what digital sensors missed. Every piece tightly clustered around NY's lot, readily accessible to detectives from week 1. Yet the public heard absolutely nothing until halfway through month 2. Do not blame the ground troops. Those 4 patrolmen and the lone sergeant stationed at the Federal Bureau's Tucson office are grinding hard. They are mapping cellular pings, chasing ancestral DNA, scrubbing videos frame by frame, dissecting router logs, and rebuilding the scene. But those frontline grunts never picked their commander. They inherited a boss who racked up 37 days of suspensions before he could legally rent a car. He once publicly trashed a federal inquiry into his own precinct as garbage. His own deputies cast a staggering 98-2 vote against him. He cleared a crime scene in hours. He shipped biological evidence to the wrong lab and openly defied federal partners on national television. He torched a covert pacemaker sting by leaking and mapped a search grid completely avoiding crucial clues. He rejected help from groups boasting thousands of rescues, opting instead to catch a basketball game during a hostage crisis. Then he stepped on camera this week, claiming he knows the motive, giving citizens 0 answers beyond a hollow warning to stay alert. Will he ruin this case? This mystery ends with an arrest. Forensics deliver results, even when leadership fails. Ancestral matching unmasked the Golden State Killer after 40 years of silence. It firmly tied Brian Kohberger to the Idaho massacre within weeks. That science never demands a lucky tip. It never needs a confession. It solely requires one distant cousin in a public database, a single branch on a pedigree, one name. Once that target surfaces, once the DNA aligns, once the cellular pings isolate a highly specific device, and 10,000 hours of tape yield the frame, capturing the getaway ride, nobody will ask who did this. They will ask how rapidly detectives could have closed this if deputies actually held the scene, if the biology went straight to Quantico, if the perimeter stretched 3 miles instead of 2, if that medical implant tracker had finished its sweep without interruption, and if the guy leading the manhunt was not the exact same cop who booted a suspect in the head in El Paso, spending 4 subsequent decades ensuring nobody found out. That truth is exposed now. Nancy Guthrie's evening prescriptions tell a haunting story. Her 10 p.m. dosage, meant to be taken right after arriving home January 31st, sat untouched on the counter. Detectives found her hearing aids inside. Her cell phone rested on the nightstand. Her car stayed parked in the garage. She was 84 years old. She weighed 150 pounds. Nobody has heard from her since her pacemaker transmitted its final pulse at 2:28 a.m. By day 3 of this manhunt, Nanos gave reporters a soundbite that permanently defined his career. He stated, "I am not used to everyone hanging on to my every word and then holding me accountable for what I say." He was completely right. He was not accustomed to it, operating for decades without enduring this level of intense scrutiny. A 98% no-confidence vote never generated national outrage. The 2015 Federal Bureau probe failed to broadcast him across American living rooms. The El Paso file sat locked away for 44 years until a newspaper pulled it. Nancy Guthrie shattered that comfortable silence. Now, the sheriff who dodged consequences his entire career faces judgment from a furious country. They are watching him fail. Somebody out there knows. The evidence locked inside labs, hiding on servers, buried in cellular records. It is coming for them, whether this department is ready or not. Hit subscribe, ring notifications, sound off in the comments, and tell me, after digesting everything you just heard, do you believe this investigation handled Nancy Guthrie the way she truly deserved? Why? Because answering that exact question finally reveals the real reason she has not been